Becky, could you please take the roll?
Sure. Mr. Bouban,
Here.
Mr. Jackson,
Here.
Ms. Sword,
Here.
Mr. Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Vice President Fry,
Here.
and excused tonight is President Dirks, Ms. Fitzgibbon, and Ms. Tarpinian.
Okay, well, at this point, the board would entertain comment from the public if anyone would like to address the board. And seeing no one, we will attempt to move on to the legislative update, which will be difficult because Donna's not here to give it to us, but it's been posted in the agenda. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at it.
The policy that the board is discussing for action tonight, our understanding is the legislation will take that issue up starting tomorrow. So that may change, the law may change on that one, so that policy may be back relatively soon, depending on what they do in front of the board for changes.
Imagine that.
Yes.
Okay, well then we're up to spotlight on,
Mr. Fry.
I'm sorry.
I would just like to point out for everybody that next week, and this is in Donna's update, is I Love My Public Schools Week.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
It's this week, right?
This week.
It's this week.
This
We are
week.
solidly in this week.
You
I
can't be passing out
apologize.
misinformation.
This week.
Is there
I
any
stand
further
corrected.
discussion
No.
on the legislative
I'll just
update?
stay quiet.
Then we will move on to the spotlight on learning. Which is someone going to introduce that?
This is a video about Fox Prairie personalized learning.
All right.
Everyone is unique in their own way. Some kids seem to learn differently because everyone is different here and don't learn new things. So now I'm deciding either if I want to be a doctor or a scientist. But then I want to make people feel better if I'm a doctor, and also want to be a scientist too, to learn new stuff, to create something pretty cool.
A couple of years ago, we instituted personalized learning at Fox Prairie Elementary, 5th grade.
Personalized learning to us means that we're trying to engage students with their own uniqueness. We saw that when kids had voice and choice in their learning, that huge benefits came from that. Kids were engaged, they were doing quality work.
Well, when they have choices, they're more in control of their learning. So when they have choice about it, they tend to care about it more. It might be where you're sitting or your kind of seating choice. It could be a choice between one task or another task. It could be a choice on how you are going to present your information. Are you going to make a project using a certain piece of technology, or are you going to present your findings in a paper?
Let's get into it. So, we'll start with this one. 81 times 16.
I see students and they have a lot more advocacy skills for themselves about how they learn best. They have a lot less of that shutdown or total refusal to do work. That doesn't happen as often because kids get choices in what they do.
We set goals to help us with our learning, and we try to reach those goals by the end of the year. We come up with our own most of the time, but the teachers will help you every once in a while if you really need it. But they're your goals, so you can come up with them.
It's important that we have students set goals in math, reading, and behavior. We have them set these goals so they can take ownership in their learning. They see what skills they need to work on, and then they can know what steps they need to take in order to reach those goals.
When you come into our rooms, it's not the typical classroom with the desks in a row and the tables in a row. When we were researching about personalized learning, we we saw that we needed different spaces for different activities. And if you come to our math room, or our science and social studies room, or our reading room, all three of the rooms look extremely different.
I like them all, but I like science the most because of all the fun experiments.
A lot of that backwards planning is thinking about some of your students need to address in 5th grade in this lesson, and then looking at, okay, so they have to learn this, but how can we make sure that they're learning it in a way that engages them and works the best for how their brain learns? And so for us, it was a lot of thinking hard about offering enough opportunities for students, and sometimes it's they're picking their own learning path, where other times it's we're all learning this topic, but how do we get to have voice and choice in that lesson? So that's kind of a fun thing to see, that they're starting to realize that we all are different and what our bodies need to stay focused.
That's Fox Prairie's personalized learning.
Okay. And you're up again, sir.
So I'll start with piggybacking off that video. You saw the Kaganza video. This is the Fox video. We're in open enrollment season, and please don't ask me to explain it because this is about as technical as I know how to get. We are boosting the posts on Facebook. So we're sending these videos out. We're boosting the posts. We're not only targeting the Stoughton zip code, but we're targeting the Oregon zip code and the McFarland zip code and the surrounding areas to boost the post, to show people what we're doing here in Stoughton. So if you're on Facebook, these videos should be boosted, or I don't exactly know how that works, but you should be seeing them. So that's one of our strategies. Relatively, it cost us $200 to boost them all. So for that, you can get a broader audience. Some of the cool things we're doing and some of the cool things that are happening. So Kaganza's is going out this week. Fox is going out next week. We have one, I think one from every school, including the last one. We're hoping to follow the young lady who is working at the UW in genetics, and so follow her, show that experience as well. So that's the videos and boosting them. This week, besides Love Your School Week, is Bus Driver Appreciation Week. And so make sure you tell the bus drivers, if you see them, how much they're appreciated for what they do. Couple things from the city. I was at the Chamber Board of Directors meeting today, and Mayor Olson shared with us that on the corner of Williams Drive and B, I think there's a sign there that says financed by McFarland State Bank or something, that the developer is actually going to the city this week to a proposal of what to put out there. And the original proposal is single-family homes, some townhouses, and some multifamily apartments. And so that will be, they're looking to develop that chunk of land. It's the same gentleman who developed the houses on the end of Page, right by Sand Hill. So it's the same gentleman who developed and put those houses in. So hopefully that will add some families to the community as well. We've been working with the city and the chamber and various people to get a supplement in the In Business magazine that comes out primarily in Madison, but the surrounding areas. Stoughton is in the March issue. We have an ad in there just kind of highlighting some of our youth apprenticeship programs. But it's an insert on Stoughton. It is also the issue that they are highlighting Stoughton Trailers as a place to work, And it's also their issue that it's the 40 influential people under 40 issue. So it's read widely, usually by a audience, and so we're working to get the word out with that. So those are all different projects that we're working on, and next week is parent conferences. So our staff will get a chance to sit down with the parents and talk about the progress of our students.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Questions?
You said the developer for the place at B in Williams was going to council, or do you know?
I want to say the RDA, but I don't know if that's the
Okay.
place that they go.
Okay,
But they were going their preliminary this week, is my understanding.
okay,
Their preliminary sketches this week.
thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, next up then is the consent agenda, which will be presented by Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. I move approval of the January 22nd, 2018 regular board meeting minutes. I move approval of the January 18th to February 27th, 2018 check register as presented. We'd like to say thank you to the following individuals and groups and move approval of their donations to the district. A check in the amount of $330.79 from Sandhill Working for Kids for art supplies. A non-monetary donation valued at $300 from Bob Dybel for a Madrigal dinner costume. A non-monetary donation in the amount of valued at $300 from Nicole Olson for a Madrigal dinner costume. A check in the amount of $246.44 from Pizza Hut for the River Bluff German field trip. A non-monetary donation valued at $220 from Stoughton Cares, Sharon Mason Boersma, for 13 boxes of lash treatment to distribute to district families. A check in the amount of $200 from Christina Shepard and Scott Dirks for the North Star San Francisco trip. A check in the amount of $175 from the Stoughton High School Choir Boosters for food and lunches for the Pops Band, lighting and sound technicians. A non-monetary donation valued at $110 from Inkworks for 400 postcards printed with Fox Prairie student artwork on them. A check in the amount of $103.76 from Kegonsa Working for Kids for the 3rd grade field trip bus cost. A check in the amount of $100 from Stoughton Hospital for the Angel Fund. A check in the amount of $50 from the Gladys Mueller Revocable Trust for the Key Club Decon convention costs. A check in the amount of $25 from Stoughton Hospital for high school Key Club Decon convention costs. A check in the amount of $20 from Nancy M. Hull for Key Club Decon convention costs. A cash in the amount of $10 from Eugene Bjorn's neighbor for high school Key Club Decon convention costs. A non-monetary donation from Stoughton Cares, Sharon Mason Boersma, with a $0 value for 60 personal care kits to distribute to district families, and related cash donation budget adjustments for $1,260.99. I move approval of a grant received from the Wallene Foundation in the amount of $5,000 to be used to purchase new welders for the Stoughton High School weld shop. I move approval of a permanent professional educator contract for Mary Grace Floater for the 2017-18 school year. I move approval of the retirement of Laura Pluchak and Nancy Durango at the end of the 2017-18 school year, and the resignation of Ryan Reichel effective January 28th, 2018, pending liquidated damages of $1,000, and the resignation of Lisa Schroeder effective February 28th, 2018, pending liquidated damages of $1,000.
Consent agenda has been presented. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the consent agenda is approved. Which brings us to proposed Vision 2020 Innovation Center.
So this was a little nugget that I dangled in front of the board probably about 2 months ago. Mike Connor, who I'd like to introduce, and Mike is a retired engineer from Cummins. Mike currently is a volunteer / consultant in our Fab Lab. And Mike and I started talking a year ago, maybe, about what's the next phase? What is the next thing we think we need as a community, as a district, along the lines of innovation of our technology, our engineering, and all of that. And so the more we talked, the more excited both of us got about the possibilities and the what ifs. And so tonight we'd like to share with you a little bit of Vision 2020, an Innovation Center proposal. So I'll turn it over to Mike to start, and I'll chime in when needed.
Well, thanks. I'm really grateful to be here. I was here in 2011 talking about Fab Lab things, and who would have thought where we are today. So, you know, that's, I hope I'm here again in like 2020 or 2023. Still breathing that dream of the technology dream and the STEAM dream. So this is a vision that's kind of come up over the last year or so, and really I want to spend a few minutes on this vision because it's an outgrowth of the Fab Lab, right? So we wouldn't be talking to you today without this Fab Lab, and I want to talk just a minute about the showcase part of the Fab Lab. So who would have thought a couple of years ago that 30 different school districts from around the state, around the country, around the world really have come to visit the Fab Lab, right? Who would have thought that we'd become a showcase? That wasn't one of the goals of the Fab Lab, right? But it's become that thing that people want to come and see. What are you guys doing that's different? You know, the story that I got from Beaver Dam was down in December, right? I said, why are you guys here, right? What brought you here? And they said, we applied for the WEDC grant 3 years in a row, and we got zip. And we see Stoughton got 3 grants in a row. And so we went to the WEDC and said, you know, how do we get a grant? They said, go to Stoughton. That's where you'll learn how to do it right. And so that was really a big thing for me. Naperville, Illinois was there the same day, right? We're going like, why would you drive from a suburb of Chicago up to Stoughton to see us? And they said they were looking at a couple different programs, Project Lead the Way, which I was involved in when I worked at Cummins, or the Fab Lab. They kind of go back and forth on cost and what it does and if it's inclusive or exclusive. So these people have been coming. And then last week we had the American Family Foundation came down. We had Fall River High School came down with their superintendent and 5 or 6 teachers and administrators, and also 2 businesses from Fall River because they're thinking about, you know, doing the support thing as well. So we became a showcase, right? So that's not that's something to be proud of. That's something to be grateful for. There we go. So this thought of this innovation center came from those thoughts, and so the innovation center would really be a collaborative effort of the local and regional partners, and I'll get into that as well. We're going to need everybody, you know, to pull this thing off. But I think we have a really good history of pulling these things off, so that's a good thing. It's a dedicated interactive space for educational, creative, really the learn, play, invent, and repeat kind of thing. From K to Gray, the new thing I hear out there is the K to Gray, right? So I'm with the gray part, I guess. And it's a hands-on learning place. But the hands-on place that we're learning through the Fab Lab is this entrepreneurship, that businesses get involved in the school district, right? And they are there. They're there during the day, and students get to interact with them. And that's really building something for us, right? That's something that we need and that businesses need as well. It's a win-win. It's a chance to spur the technological growth in the Stoughton area, right? This is a big chance for us. It's a place to train and retrain. And people that get left behind by this digital world, right? This is a place where they can come and say, okay, I got left behind, but I'm catching up. And this is the practical place to do that. It's advanced STEAM schools, so it'd be a place for all of our K-12 students, right? To come and play and learn. And it's a gift to our region or our community. That's really the thing. And that's really what the Fab Lab has been too. So this is an extension of that. So those are the words. What does it look like, right? So it looks like this technical incubator thing, like a starting block thing in Madison, right? But it brings to kind of the technology catalyst. It's going to be an innovative workspace for established businesses as well. These established businesses that we learned from Fiskars last week, they came down because Fiskars Corporation is looking at a product innovation center. They don't know what it should look like. They don't know what tools should be in it, and they don't know who they should hire. What technical skills should they hire, right? So they came down and looked to see what we had. So this is something that they could use as a model, right? Or they could use our facility. I love the picture of the guitars up there. So this year, as you guys know, the Guitar Girl program, right? It's the wildest program we've ever. So if you look towards the right, you'll see the Led Zeppelin guitar, and I think that's really awesome that the girls could pick their own styles this year. So and we get some lasers in there. So workforce development, what does that look like? The train and retrain, right? Because as this economy moves, it's moving faster, right? We think that we're done with this digital age. We think we've merged it with the Industrial Revolution. We might be totally wrong, right? We might double ourselves again, right? The speed of technology is not slowing down, right? We thought that it would slow down. We thought, oh, we're going to have, 4G and all this stuff, and no, it's not slowing down. The pace is picking up, right? Startup workspace. So actually, one of our students started a little project, and it turned into a little business, so I put his picture up there. And mentoring about technical, and it's about technical assistance too, and I'll get into that a little bit later. It's about the arts and state of the arts. So we put, just by luck, we were able to put the Fab Lab in the old print room. It was the old print shop, right, where the print makers used to be, the printing machines used to be. It's right next to the art department, which was a blessing. I mean, we could have put it in a better spot. Maybe next to the science would be better. But the artists are in there all the time. They are just using those tools like crazy. So that's really the state of the art and why STEAM is so important now. I wouldn't have thought that before. So advanced K-12 STEAM school, and that's going to bring all these things together. And I think it's really important just to look at the Innovation Center as the center of this thing, right? It'll bring the businesses, and this is one of the engineers at Cummins by day. He's a guitarist by night, right? So he's helping this young lady tune her guitar. Okay?
So, before I get to what it is not, it helps me to picture in my mind a space that during the day our students, K-12, PK-12, are using the space to learn, to grow, to innovate, to get hands-on, to learn from maybe the experts in the field, to work hand in hand with them. And then after school, in most of our facilities, once the kids go home, our facilities are almost like ghost towns. But imagine a space that we have all this creative equipment and creative space that is open to the community, that is open to businesses when our students aren't there, or even when our students are there, they're working hand in hand with our businesses. And so that businesses and community members and others can use what we have, what we're training and we're teaching our students on, and they can work hand in hand. And imagine K to grade working side by side and learning together. Because the intergenerational learning experience is something that we seem to be losing, not only in Stoughton, but across the nation. So imagine a space that brings people together, that brings the community together. What it looks like, the logistics, where it should be, all of that, we're not at that point yet. We're still kind of conceptual visioning. So what 2020 is not? It's not a charter school. Now, we've talked about all these things, Mike and I sitting down and brainstorming with people, and you know, one of our conversations is, do we do a technology charter school? Do we do a STEAM charter school? I don't think that that's the best use of this facility. Because there again, we're calling it a school, and that seems to indicate, like the rest of our buildings, we're just opening it to students when this is much more. It's not a technical school, because we purposely use STEAM because you want to get the arts. Because imagine a space that also has the creative spaces for our artists to create, to dabble, to use all different types of mediums, and to use the tools and technology we have to help create and push their artwork to the next level. It's not a for-profit company. There are some for-profit companies around that offers maker spaces or different spaces that people can pay to go and use the equipment. We didn't want it a for-profit company. We wanted this as something that is school community working together. We did not go into this, and this was not a conversation to save this building in this parking lot. That was not where we went into this. We went into this as an innovation center for our community, and what does our community need as far as this line. It's not exclusive. It wouldn't be just for the school system. It wouldn't be just for the haves or the have-nots. It would be open to everybody. It would be, as Mike said, an opportunity to train, retrain, and retain our workforce. And it's not impossible. The Fab Lab showed us that it was not impossible to go to the next level. It was not impossible to move something forward, and it's not impossible to dream big and then go out and get it. So, love this quote. The world needs dreamers, and the world needs doers. But above all, the world needs dreamers who do. This is a space where our dreamers can do. This is a space where K-12, K to grade can dream, can play, can fail, can move, can try again, and dream and play and move forward. Here's a list of people. We've been floating this idea, and Mike in particular has been floating an idea of an innovation center to different entities. Just kind of saying, what do you think? Not that, you know, we're going to do this, not that we've gotten the green light for this, but this is what we're thinking. What do you think? And Mike's like a kid in the candy store sometimes when he comes back and says, I just met with so-and-so, and let me tell you what they said, and boy, are they excited. And you know, they're excited to potentially partner with us, whether it's financial, if we get this up and going, whether it's volunteering, whether it's whatever. There's broad realization, and there's broad acknowledgement that this could be a great thing, not only for Stoughton, but for the region. This could be a place that we could come together and move forward. And so, again, we're floating this idea around. Now, one of the things that if I was sitting in your chairs, I would ask, but you're talking about a community project. You're talking about, you know, something that's big. Is this really the school district, and why us? And so my answer to saying is, in our community, if not us, who? If not us to start the ball rolling on this, then who? Which goes to the next slide, Mike. So what do we need from you? We floated this idea to our business partners. Now we're floating the idea to you. I think we need to lead the way. I think we need to take a stand and say, this is something that we believe, if this is what you believe a direction we should go, because then I can go with, and Mike and I can go to the city and go to the chamber and go to some other people and saying, this is something we're thinking of, as a school district, we're on board and we're moving forward. I think you need to get on board. And we need to work together. Because I truly believe there is enough support for this that we can do this with little to no cost to the district. That we can fund a lot of this with our business partners. Sort of like we did the Fab Lab, where we got commitments from our business partners to keep this viable for 3 years and then continue to, there is going to be some expenses, but I think a bulk of it, I think, is working with our partners. And so we need a consensus of, is this a direction we want to go? Mike and I are happy to do the lifting. Mike and I are happy to move forward. But there again, we want to know, is this a direction we want to go? Is this a direction we as a school district want to head? And moving forward, because we're at that phase. We're at that phase where we've floated the idea, we've talked to some business partners, and if we really start to talk now logistics and start putting meat to this, we need to know if this is a direction the district and board and everybody is interested in pursuing. So,
yeah, so we go back to kind of the Vision 2020. We look at this as like opening in September of 2020. So we have a couple months to think about this, right? You have a couple months to say, okay, can we merge this with other ideas that we have? Can we get going on this? But basically what the foundations and the companies are telling us is, you know, we can get this board behind this thing. We'll get a lot of support from them. They really want a consensus. There's some of them that want to support just the program, right? There's a few of them, like WDC and the city grant, and there's another foundation that would actually do some of the capital stuff, so some of the brick and mortar. But a lot of them want to support the program and the process, right? Just kind of like the model of the Fab Lab, where all the equipment, all the teacher training, the 3-year sustainability for materials, I don't know, was all covered, right? And then the school district upfit the room, right, and did all those things. So kind of the same model as the Fab Lab. In the Fab Lab model, we went out before the Cummins grant, before we got the Cummins grant. Part of that work that I had to do is go around and survey all the foundations and the companies in the area, right? And it turned out to be a real plus, because we found out what their scope was, whether they would, and all we asked them in 2011, and remember 2011 was a really ugly time financially, right? It was an ugly time for public education. There was protests at the Capitol. It wasn't the best time for me to come up and say, hey, guess what? We want to spend some money on public education. But it worked, right? It was an opportunity that we got, because the Cummins Foundation at the time was funded well. And so they came up with the original $100,000, and the rest of the community foundations and companies came up with another $100,000 within a couple of weeks, because we had done that work up front. So we used that same model. Tim and I used that same model. We went out and scoped these people. Will Alliant Energy, are they interested? Well, yeah, they're really interested in doing something like this, and they want some input in there. I said, Mike, can we put in a charging station, you know, electric car charging station in front of this thing and put Alliant Energy on it? I said, sure, yeah, you can do that. You know, so each company has their own take on what it should look like, and we'll get their feedback as well. And each one of you have your feedback on what you think it should look like, and we'd love to hear about that, because that's what this thing is going to take. It's going to take all those partners that we got back here, right? All these partners, including SCORE was really excited about. They have an office on the east side, on the west side, I'm sorry, and they have volunteers in the city. So they either do Madison or Janesville. No activity for SCORE. They're a counseling service for small businesses. They're funded by the SBA. We have, I don't know, did any of you get a chance to read it's called the 2-pager by Professor Ken? So Professor Ken's here today. It's actually 6 pages. So it's about Troy, New York. It's got in there Troy, New York. But it's a gift, because it's got some history about why high schools were formed in the United States, right? Why our grandparents actually went to high school and our great-grandparents didn't. And so that's a gift to us as well. And I think the other gift that we got a few months ago was one of those 6 or 8 students from the UW came down and did some consulting for us that would cost thousands of dollars, right? And take a year or 2 to do. So that was pretty neat. So when I look at this thing, I think the timing is right. The timing is right. And I think the economy's in a shape where a lot of these foundations and a lot of these companies are willing to reach out to us because of our success that we've showed them already. We've already showed them that we can do this thing. We got a team to do it. So for that, I think the last slide is thank you. So
Thank you, and any questions you may have.
Steve?
Go ahead, Steve.
On the list of partners, was the asterisk those that are currently involved in the Fab Lab?
Correct.
Or, okay,
Right.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, they're current. So WDC has a program that they administer through cities for things like this. So we'd have to set up a 501c3. It would be separate from the school district together. And I like to preach about that just for a second, because one of the things that's helped the Fab Lab succeed is when we get in trouble and we're saying this is mine, this is yours. The spirit has been what's good for the Fab Lab is good for the school district. What's good for the school district, good for the Fab Lab. This is the same kind of thing. We'll have to have that same kind of crosstalk, right? And it's worked every time because we have the same goals, which is pretty awesome, right? We might get mixed up in the details, and that's one of the things I want to talk about is just the details, right? This is not details. These are the big picture things. This is about floating the idea. We don't have to make a decision, but I really like you really to think about it in the next 6-8 weeks, and then we'll come back and just say, you know, is this we want to move forward? Is this something that really excites you? I got to tell you, I've met with every one of these people on this list, and they are excited. And I came out with a lot of juice for that. So, and I would text them. I'm like, this is last Thursday. I went to Fiskars Corporation. Okay, so I drove up there and I toured their technology center, and they took me to lunch, and then I made a presentation, and I told Tim, this is my day. I got a lunch. So. Anyways, thank you so much for the support, and Allison.
Yeah, I think this looks really wonderful. I think that I would agree with you that this is probably the time to be thinking about this when we look at a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world right now. I mean, SpaceX sending up a Tesla that's now orbiting around the sun, and you start looking at all the great things that are happening. It would be good to be kind of on the forefront of that. You know, and it's good to see there's so many interested partners, because obviously the concern would be money and what would we need to put into it to make this happen, and that's, that would be the one caution. It's just, it sounds fantastic, and I really appreciate what you've put into it. Just have to make sure we can afford it.
Right. And I gotta say about the SpaceX launch, which I watched, awesome. If
it was
you
incredible.
watch the SpaceX launch, they opened up the SpaceX big room, right, with 6,000 workers in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone, maybe 2 or 3 are above 30, right? These are millennials, marching to Mars.
Yeah.
And they're gonna leave the rest of the old, they're gonna leave the old draft behind, NASA, all the old stuff behind. They're just going to Mars, and there's no doubt they can make it. So that was pretty neat to see them.
It was.
They weren't seasoned engineers. They were young and full of life. Yeah.
It's pretty
Go ahead.
So I struggle a little bit with this because I'm a detail guy. So what is in this thing? I understand that it's an innovation center and it's going to do all these things. I'm not sure I understand what is going to be in it.
Okay, so it is a makerspace on steroids.
Okay, and pretend I'm a lawyer who doesn't know how to make things.
Okay, that's fine.
Just purely
No,
hypothetical.
that's good. So all those tools that we have in the Fab Lab that bring you from the virtual world to the physical world in a class period or an evening or whatever. So those are the tools that are in there, right? And then there's support around those tools for the entrepreneurship part of it, the Kickstarter part of it. And Professor Ken is here tonight. He lived in, I think we sold their house in Troy now, right? So in Troy, New York, they have a center of gravity. You can go on their website, and it was part of the packet that.
I saw it,
So
yes.
It talks about it. And one of the advantages we have is that if you look at maker spaces or like Sector 67 in Madison, some really good spaces, right? They are in the community, and they're working towards getting in the schools. We are in the school, we are working towards going into the community. We got a really good community program. Our nights, our weekend programs are really supported by the community. They're all free and they come in masses. Our summer school program is one of the most popular. Mothers and fathers wait to click on the Fab Lab summer program for their kids. I mean, you could probably double that and still have a waiting list. So one of the advantages we have, when I go to the health club during the day, there is nobody there. Everybody's working, okay? When I go there in the evening or early morning, it's full. So one of the advantages we have over like the center of gravity is we'll have a school close enough, hopefully, to use that thing during the day, and then some businesses will be in there, well, store, and other people will come and go. But it'll be a facility used like none other.
So does this replace the Fab Lab, upgrade the Fab Lab, supplement the Fab Lab? Is it an addition to the Fab Lab?
Addition to, right. There's no reason why that equipment can't be in every school, right? It's cheap enough, right?
I've no idea.
3D printers are $2,500. They used to be, our first one was $20,000. Okay. Lasers were $55,000. Our last two we bought two for $78,000 last year. So all the price of this technology is coming way down. So there's no reason why. We put it in the middle school last year with a grant, and that's going really well, right? So that part of it, so the industry has supported all that equipment, right? And because it's a model of at scale of what they want to do, right?
So as far as the technology that's in it, right now we are bound by our own what we know. And so I don't know what 2 years from now the technology that's going to be out there. And so this is a space that has to be nimble and flexible enough to change with society. Because 5 years ago, who would have thought what they are doing with 3D printers? Who would have thought that we would have had a student that made another student a hand with a 3D printer? I never would have. So this space has to be flexible and nimble enough that we can adapt to what's out there. But I think it also has to be flexible and nimble enough that it's inviting, that it's a place that you go there and your creative juices just start to flow. And so there's nothing wrong with having some traditional spaces like traditional art studios. So I talked about the artist and some painting and pottery and things like that. But then how do you incorporate the technology? As Mike said, it's also a place that we can encourage and spur entrepreneurship. And maybe it's a facility that you bring in people to run seminars in entrepreneurship, to run seminars on how do you start a business. It's working with our local businesses to say, what is it, the skills that you need? What is it, the equipment and all of this that you need your workers trained on? And working with them, and maybe we're the training facility at night for some of them. Or retraining our community of, I really don't know how to use this equipment, but if I knew how to use this equipment, I could get my foot in the door somewhere else. So as far as what's exactly in there, I'm more the dreamer, I'll tell you that. I'm the dreamer of look at the possibilities. I rely on Mike and others in the expertise in the fields of saying, where do we start? What do we start that's in there? But I also keep challenging them of saying, I don't want this to be the shop class of old, where we're more like the 1950s, or we're getting the hand-me-downs of different businesses, and we're training our students, and we're training the community and giving them opportunities to things that really are obsolete. We need to be cutting edge.
I think one of the advantages we've had at the Fab Lab is because of our industry funding and school district funding, it's been really cool to see the student come back after a year or whatever and say, hey, we didn't have that when we were here. And it's only been a few months, right? But we have replaced ourselves many times over. And I think we don't know which equipment will be in there, but we'll have it full.
So it's not only a question of what's in there, but who's in there.
Correct.
And is there any thought yet in terms of how much square footage is going to be required, or how much, or what the space that this would need would look like?
Well, I think one of the mistakes, I guess if I look back, the school districts come and say, you know, what would you do different in the Fab Lab if you had to build it again? And I said, think a lot bigger. You know, because we built it the first year, right? We doubled it the second year, now we tripled the size of it. And now we put it in the middle school. So I think we need to, in a big way, that it's going to be successful and we're going to sustain this thing. So I think that was what I learned from the Fab Lab was we're going to need enough room. I don't know what the details of that. I don't know where the parking would be. I don't know all that stuff, right? But the thing I would like for you to really think about is this next 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever. Is this something you want to get on board? Because this changes this board. This changes our school district in a way of K to grade, right? Instead of K to 12, now you're doing. You got Walt Olson and his grandson up there, right? Walt knows how to run the lasers now. You know, he was a builder in town for many years, and you know he's a builder. And it's really neat to see the interaction between the generations that we hadn't seen before, and we never knew this was going to happen. That's the joy of it. If we hadn't built this, we wouldn't know that. So I think we're going to have the same surprises with the Vision 2020 Innovation Center.
First of all, thanks for being here. I'll just say right from, this is something that I could personally really get behind. Having some experience myself in innovation and educational innovation, I think in the world of education, we talk about innovation a lot, but my experience is what happens is schools go in that direction and then they slowly go back to the way that they were. And I like the boldness of this. I think another reality we do face is declining enrollment. And I have to look through that lens. And this, to me, is something that truly could be unique, that draws more families to this community. And I really believe we have to make a bold move. I think it was in the Hub, some report from 10 years ago, they were having the same issues that they are. So we need to make a bold move, and I think this could be it. So I really commend you on this. I, unlike Frank, am not as much of a detail person. So I think that's good. We have some balance. But I also want to echo what Tim said. I think we want to provide some details if we move forward with this, but we also want to leave some stuff open for flexibility, especially as this develops and we get the community behind it for them to give some input. But this is exciting, and right now, based on what I'm hearing, it's something that I personally can get behind. Obviously, more information will be coming, but thank you.
Yeah. When we were developing and assembling the Fab Lab, where in that process did we start designing curriculum that would fit into it, or figure out how it was going to fit into the daily schedules of our student body?
So I can answer that a little bit, or you want to?
You can start and I'll chime in.
So we started with a curriculum. So we sent 3 of our instructors to the MIT Master's course, which is the Fab Academy, right? They did it through the Polycom. So every Wednesday they took a master's course. And I said in a couple of them, it was really tough. So we took that, every one of those machines and every one of that lesson, and put it in a perspective that the students could learn with, right? And so that was the curriculum. And Judy can probably, that's pretty much what we did, right? And then from there, we just made sure that they were learning every one of those things, right? what was the part in that learning? You know, what went well, what didn't go well? What would you do different the next time? What was your failure? And the Fab Lab is, you know, come here and fail fast and fail often, because you'll be successful tomorrow.
And so was that after we had already approved everything that had to do with the Fab Lab, or after it was constructed, or was this in conjunction
Boy,
with all of that?
remember getting board approval for the Fab Lab? I don't know if we ever did.
I think we,
Yeah, you did.
we did.
Yeah.
We presented the idea. We presented the, this is what we're looking for. We presented, we want to go after this grant from Cummins. We have a really good chance of getting this. This is a Fab Lab. The board approved that and we moved forward for it. I envision this space, you saw the video from Fox on personalized learning. I envision this space as also a personalized learning space. That it may not have a hard set curriculum, but it may have an integrated curriculum where we're integrating the math and the science and the history and the English and everything into projects and into what is driving the students. One of the things that we have to avoid, and one of the things that they're working really hard at the Fab Lab, is to adapt to the ever-changing ability of our students. So when we first started the Fab Lab, that first group going through the Fab Lab, basic things like the keychain and things like that were things that were new to them. We now have students coming in who have gone through our summer courses, who have gone through our night courses, etc., who've already done the keychain. Well, so what? I know how to do this keychain. What else can I do? And they're pushing us. They're pushing us on what we can do with the equipment and the spaces. I envision the same thing here, is our students will push us, and our community will push us with coming in and saying, we have this need. We have this need to help design something or a prototype, or, and then look at in conjunction. So Madison College has some great equipment, some great spaces. They have a full production floor. Wouldn't it be great if at some point we go from small scale to production on something in conjunction with them? Yeah, that's a dream, years and years, and maybe not as far as I think, but that is something that I think we have to stem. So as far as the curriculum, I think we start with a base curriculum, John, of what we do with our students, but it's more of a personalized learning, more of a let's challenge them to how do you incorporate this, how do you meld that together, and come up with some of the things. You're going to hear the last meeting in March, you're going to hear from the high school about some of the career pathways that they're doing and where they're going, and one of them is health careers, but one of them is STEM and STEAM, and how do you incorporate the learning, and how do you incorporate so that what you're working on can cover your maybe meet the needs of multiple different classes, so you're integrating so that we don't have a standalone. Education, in particular high school education, is still more like the factory model. Okay, I go to one room and get my English, I go to another room and get my math, I go to a room and get my science. Don't we owe it to our students, and don't we owe it to the ever-changing world to see how we can meld those? So that maybe I'm working on a project that it's incorporating my English, my math, my science, maybe it's incorporating my social studies and the research and community, etc. That is a bold move in a bold direction, but that is where I think realistically we need to go as education. And I'll get off my soapbox, I'm sorry.
So obviously this is a much bigger idea than Fab Lab was, or it sounds like it is. How much bigger? 10 times bigger? 50 times bigger?
I mean, it's a lot bigger, it's a lot bolder than the Fab Lab, I think we've learned from the Fab Lab that, you know, this community is unique, and in a way that they once they decide to do something, once they decide to move forward on something, and and once they see, what our community really wants to see is some success first. They just don't want to hear the hot air. I think maybe it's a little conservative, or maybe it's a critic from within us, but it wants to see some success first. And I think that's where, that's where the high school Fab Lab and now the middle school Fab Lab, those things and the weekend stuff that we do and the night stuff has shown the community that this is the way we're going. It's a new way of learning, right? It's a new way of doing calculus when you come to the Fab Lab for your calculus class and you calculate, you actually make so one of the things in calculus is you have to design something, and then you have to measure the volume of an irregular shape. It's really hard to do, right? Engineers have been working on it for years, right? But the calculus students came in and their theme was superheroes. So we have Batman, we had Spider-Man, all the superhero stuff. So all that was done on a laser in the Fab Lab, and then they took that and measured and calculated wrote a formula to calculate the irregular shape, and then took their shapes with them. And they didn't know at the time that they were engaged in this battle of let's see, that engineers for years were trying to figure out how to measure the volume of a regular shape. I mean, it seems like a really easy thing, right? But it's not. So that kind of thing, bringing that kind of thing, and then we have this thing in the Fab Lab called the useless machine. You turn it on and it turns itself off, right? But while the students make that, they're going to make that this summer, right? While they're making that, they learn about interference fit. They learn to solder. They learn how to program a little microchip, right? They learn how a normally open switch, normally closed switch works. They learn how a motor reverses. They learn a bunch of stuff in the meantime, having all this fun building a motor. And I look at it like Dan Schmidt, our band director, when he teaches these girls about guitars, they are dreaming about a new instrument that hasn't been made yet, right? An instrument got made 2 weeks ago down at the Virtual Foundry. It's a violin. One of our former Fab Lab students, he actually works for the school district now as one of our technical assistants. He made a violin printed out of metal, right? 3D printed out of metal, and it's a electric violin, one of the first in the world that I've seen. It's just the neck and the piece that fits underneath your chin. That's it. There needs to be no body, right? If there's electronic pickups on it, it sounds like a violin. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. So, would that have been made without the thought of, we can make any instrument we want. Why don't we make an instrument that hasn't been created yet? So I think that's the joy of my part of it. That's my, I don't know if I'm one of the founders of the Fab Lab or the Fab Lab found me, but I think this is the next step. This is the next thing, and the opportunity is there for us. I think it's not that, when I preached about the Fab Lab, we raised about $209,000. Average home cost in Stoughton is around $220,000, $230,000, somewhere in there. So when you look at spending, I don't know, 4 or 5 times that much, I don't know where you spend on this thing, but I think it's a great investment. That's what I think it is.
Well, I do too, and the reason I'm asking about scale is because I spend some time at Sector 67, I think you do too, and it's never the same place. When you walk in there, there's always some new machine. In his case, it's some old machine that he got cheap and he's fixing it up, which won't be necessarily the case with us, but they're having to grow, and that's why I'm trying to anticipate, if you put this thing in too small of a box,
yeah.
Where are you going to go?
And that was our mistake. Well, that was our thinking with the Fab Lab. We were hoping that it would take off, right? But we really didn't know. We had no clue, right?
Right.
But when looking back, when Wanakee came to us and said, "We're going to build a Fab Lab," they came to us 4 times in a year, right? And their superintendent finally came. I said, "Why don't you pull the plug and just do this thing?" So they built a huge Fab Lab, bigger than ours. I think it's probably bigger than our middle school and our high school put together. and it's big, and they got room to grow. So that was that was the thing with the Fab Lab, the spirit of the Fab Lab, and I tell them on every tour is, we've got a Fab Lab and we want to help you build a better one. And I can see this innovation center. People are coming. I was downtown trying to have dinner last Saturday night. You look at the draw that the Opera House has done to this town, right? This is kind of the same thing. We have a great location right here. I would love to be in this circle somewhere, right? That would be really neat. And who knows what would happen? I can't even bring that up, but thank you.
So in 6-8 weeks, we're going to revisit this?
Yep. So this was just kind of the, present the idea to let you start to think. If you have questions that you think of, shoot me an email and we'll be glad to answer them. And I'll send out the answers to the entire board so that, but yeah, if you think of questions, feel free to let us know.
This is also very exciting to me, and I think, I agree with Tim, is very bold, and I think something that can help improve enrollment is, yes. And I would challenge Alliant Energy to give you more than one car charger.
It was neat, the day they came, I don't know if you've been to the site, fablabstoughton.org. If you haven't been there, go there. And we have some stuff posted on the right-hand side, it's our projects and stuff, the wind turbines on there, right? So it's funny because the middle schoolers build wind turbines, right? But the high schoolers missed the wind turbine thing. So these bunch of kids wanted to build a big wind turbine. So they built a big one. It didn't work very well. So I happened to be at the middle school. They brought one of the wind turbines up, a little miniature one, kind of a toy thing. The high schoolers look at it and go, that's our solution. And so they got the wind turbine working, and that was pretty neat. And now the next big project at the Fab Lab is Jonah's Next Hand. So I don't know if you know this, but we're building the next generation of that. It's servo-driven with Myo, which is a muscle and nerve. So Myo is developed for video games. So when you take your sword and go like this, your video game does it. So John Hopkins started it with $4 million grant from the government, and now those things, and they built one. They built the Myo arm, and it works great. And now we'll probably build that for under $200. And so that'll be the next generation. And Ian's already working on the next generation of that through a company called Open Bionics. They're like the wiki of prosthetics. So we signed up for that, and any improvements we make on the arm and the hand, we send to them. And so when you think about how technology used to work, a company would develop something. It'd take them years to get it right. On this Open Bionics site, there are thousands of people working to solve problems and then getting together on the web. It's a great time to be alive. So watch for that new arm. It's coming out probably in March or April, and then the next generation hopefully will be done before he graduates.
One more thing that,
Just one?
well, I have a lot of stuff, but that just jogged, one of the things when we did the community conversation last April, I heard a lot of comments that people made about having like a lighthouse school where, you, like you say, there's kids in there during the day, but then what do you do with it the rest of the time? And one of the possibilities was some kind of a healthcare where people could come in and, there's meeting space and so forth, but kind of a community clinic kind of thing. And that led me to think, we've already got a CNA program, we're working on our health services programs, and that seems kind of integrated. You could put the science of healthcare into the innovation, and I don't know, it's just another exciting thing. Exactly. So hopefully that would be something that could be explored and might be an additional resource for maybe getting some other organizations on board with it if it was some medical sciences.
So one of the things that I will challenge the board with is, and my hope is that we can sit down in May and June and talk about where do we want to go. And I would challenge the board to think big, to think bold, and let's take a risk.
let's push forward.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
For all the work that you've already done.
Yeah.
And Mr. Jackson?
Oh, I gotta
you are up
talk
with
now.
the,
Oh, boy.
with the 1892 building update.
I won't
I
mess
asked
up.
Steve to do it because he's the liaison.
So, let's see, January 30th, we had a facilities meeting, and the 1892 High School Coalition presented. And you all have their presentation attached to today's meeting. So the High School Coalition is a group, Our Old House, Stoughton Historical Society, Stoughton Landmark Commission, and Sustainable Stoughton. They're working together. I won't go through the whole PowerPoint, but I will point out pages 7 through 11 goes over their activities that they've undertaken for the past 2 years related to understanding the possibilities around the 1892 high school building. Most recently, they completed a community survey, and they found some high interest in the building. So that's part of some of their presentation. Coincidentally, high interest in both education and community use. So that whole idea of K to Gray, and try not to overuse that, but thanks for providing. You got it from someone else, so. And an interest from some potential donors to help, make the reuse of that building come to fruition. They presented on their information, again, on the PowerPoint presentation. And then we discussed some of the funds available in our budget, and Erica provided information on that, annual heating and kind of maintenance costs. And then the money left over from one of the referendum from '99, was it? For maintenance, $254,000. So that led into a discussion of, should we be spending some of that money to help preserve and avoid water, preserve parts of the building where we can, mainly to avoid water getting into the basement so that additional damage doesn't occur. So the facilities committee agreed or voted to have Cal get an RFP together for grading. And that was, we talked about tuck pointing and a few other things, but grading was the primary area to focus on. We don't know what that would cost, but it could be significant. And then we also talked about not really moving forward until we get the results from the facilities study, which Cal mentioned we should hear back on by around the end of June. We should know a lot of the information from the facilities study, although he did indicate that complete study should take about a year. But that we wouldn't really make any additional decision around additional maintenance until the facility study was completed, or at least until most of the information in June was available, I should say. That's about all I was going to share. So if anybody has questions, if you go through the presentation, it does lay out what the coalition, the work they had done. So
That sounds about right to me. Tim, does the board need to take any action about the vote that we took to direct Cal to get the?
No.
So
No.
until he comes back with a number,
Correct.
and that'll go through the
Correct.
board. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. And anybody else have any questions about that? We're all talked out.
easy enough.
Good job.
And up next is a security camera update, which
So,
also comes from the facilities.
Yep, so facilities saw the same presentation on cameras that the board saw a couple months ago, I think it was, or 3 months ago. there was interest in the facilities committee that they recommended that that administration bring to the board a recommendation in pricing for cameras, for the different stages, whether we do the entire district, whether we just do the high school, whether we do high school, middle school. In order to get those firm prices, we would have to go to an RFP, because everything else is just estimates, etc. And while we don't need the board's permission to go to an RFP, going to an RFP takes a lot of work. And so before I direct Paul and the crew to create the RFP, to go through the whole process, I just wanted to have a discussion. Are we interested in looking at cameras? Or is this, because to be honest, we've talked about it 3 or 4 times, but we really haven't come to any consensus of moving forward or not moving forward. So I guess what I'm asking for is direction from the board of, do we go out and get an RFP? Is this something we're interested in pursuing? Not that we're making a decision to put them in, but realizing if we have no interest in doing it, an RFP is a lot of work for nothing.
So before we have that discussion, I'll just say for me personally, the only principal that wasn't at that particular facilities meeting was Trish. And I asked every other principal at the meeting whether they felt like they wanted cameras in their buildings, and they unanimously said that they did. So, just for point of reference.
I would concur. Personally, I'd like to move forward with an RFP and looking into this. I've been a strong advocate of getting some cameras in our buildings. I think most of the schools or districts that I have experiences with have them, and I know we do on some level, but I think the greater options and opportunities to ensure safety and security that they're going to bring are very worth the cost. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well, so I don't know how everyone else feels. Steve?
Yeah, I was just going to throw out that when we had the facility discussion around the cameras, if we didn't do this quickly, and give direction, we might lose the opportunity to do any installation over the summer, is how I kind of understood it. Right, Paul? Okay. So, and initially I was kind of big brother-ish on this, and I've gotten over that. So, I'm all for it. On the safety side of things, we need, again, if our staff are saying this will help and it will make things safer for the kids, I'm on it.
John?
Yeah, most of the concerns that I've heard voiced at any time are that we're going to have to make sure that we approach cameras internal to the school from a policy perspective, and I don't see any roadblocks to getting that done before we could potentially install any cameras. And outside of that, I don't think I've heard any strong or compelling opposition to at least getting a quote, seeing what it would cost, and then proceeding to some sort of final approval. So,
Steve?
On the policy, we do have a policy in place already, and I had taken a look at it. I mean, obviously, we would have to review it because it's a little bit, it might be a little bit more tweak it here or there, but I mean, we have a policy that already says cameras are okay, so I think it's probably.
Well, I think
we
we've
at least
got
have a
plenty of
start.
time
Yeah.
to deal with the policy thing before
exactly.
school would start again, so. Frank?
Are we talking about all the schools or just the high school?
Getting cost for all the schools.
I think that's something you could look at. If we do go get an RFP, we would break it out. And so that's something you could decide, we just want to do high school, or we want to do high school, middle school, or we want to do all. That's a decision point that we haven't got. We don't even have the pricing right now, other than an estimate of what it would cost in the different phases.
is it fair to say that we've had consistently the strongest requests from high school administration for internal cameras?
Yes.
And this is, I guess, given that this is the 3rd or 4th time this has come up, there's some controversy about it. What is the controversy exactly? Why does this never go anywhere?
Well, there's some reluctance on some people's part about how long are we gonna hold on to the information, who gets to see the information, what do we do with the information, all those sorts of things. And that's, I think, after we get the number of discussion that we would need to have as a board to resolve some of that stuff. Those are the hesitations that I'm familiar with.
There's also always seemed to have been a concern in making sure that before we would install any cameras internal to the schools, we would make sure that we give the community enough of a heads up so people aren't caught off guard, or so if they have if family members or if families in our district have any concerns of their own, that they would have time to ask questions or voice concerns to us. And I don't know, that seems to have been the only roadblock is making sure that we move slowly enough to think through all of the potential concerns that might surface. But
Well, there was some discussion at the facilities committee that I thought made a fair amount of sense, that, we've done secured entrances, we've done a number of things, we've done ALICE training, and to make all of those steps and then get to the camera question and decide not to seems counter to that direction. I mean, we're already doing a lot of things that are making our schools safer. So for me, I don't know why we wouldn't do this step.
Thank you.
And yeah, I would just, similar to what you're saying, I would add that, like, from the student side of things, when we've been doing all of the ALICE training, I've heard a lot of students just asking why we don't have cameras in more places around the building. And I think that, I know for me, it'd be really reassuring to know that in a situation like that, and also in any other situation, to know that there are, like, eyes throughout the building would make me feel a lot safer, and I think a lot of other students as well.
And y'all did a survey or something in the North Star
a
year ago, maybe?
I'm not sure, but I took a poll of student senators earlier in the year, and I think the results might have been a little inaccurate, just because I don't think a lot of students know the extent of maybe just like minor crimes or anything that happens within the school, because those investigations and cases are kept private. So I think that might have not been the most accurate data to go off of. But with the ALICE training, there's definitely been, I would say, a shift in mindset about that.
Interesting. Anybody else have anything? So you're looking for us to basically voice
So
support?
from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, the board is okay with us going forward to get an RFP to do further discussion. I think we said we needed to make a decision by the end of March as whether we are, in order to realistically, if we are going to install cameras this summer, to have them in place, because it's too disruptive to install them throughout the year. So if we are going to do cameras and install them over the summer for next school year, we're going to have to make the decision by the end of March. So we will, I will direct Paul to go out and get pricing, and so anticipate in March, once we get the pricing, we'll come back to you with some proposals and look for a decision then, whether we go or not, we don't go. But I just wanted to make sure we had support to move forward before we took this next step. So, and it sounds like we do. So that's all I was looking for.
Okay. And then we do have 3 items for discussion action, the first of which is the open enrollment seats. And do I need a motion?
Yep. To approve the seats as
I would
presented.
entertain a motion to approve the open enrollment seats.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay,
Well,
yes?
did we, when did this come up? Last
Last meeting,
Yeah,
yes.
So, okay, never mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those are approved. And up next is the bus lease resolution. I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second that one?
Okay. Is there any discussion about the bus lease?
No.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is also approved. And we do have one policy, 723 Early College Credit Program. Normally we would have Ms. Carpinian walk us through that, but it's been posted. I assume this is the second reading.
And this is the one that they will be talking about starting this week, so this may change.
So I would entertain a motion before we discuss, yes?
I had a question. Is this the policy that says the district has to pay for students to take classes that
Correct.
the district doesn't offer? There was some confusion. There were students talking about it today. Does it have to be related to a major or path of study, or is it any class that isn't offered?
I don't think so.
It's any class that we don't have, but then there's whether it's taken for high school credit or just college credit. So there's different stipulations of whether you're gonna count it for duly count it and duly counting it or only counting it for college has different funding percentages for the school, the state, and the student's family.
Okay, thank you.
So even given the fact that it may be a temporary policy, I would entertain a motion to
This is the
approve
first
that.
reading though, right?
No,
No,
it's
it's
second.
Second, it says on there, first reading. Okay, so I get it.
Yep, this is action.
I move we approve policy 723, new policy as written.
I second.
Okay, is there discussion, Frankie? Had your hand up for a second.
No, it's, just making sure you look that way.
Oh, I
Helping you out.
appreciate it. All right, well, there doesn't appear to be any discussion. This is a roll call, is that correct? For policy?
Yeah, okay, do that.
Mr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Coughlin?
Aye.
Ms. Swart?
Aye.
Mr. Frye?
Yes?
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Bubai?
Yes.
And that policy is approved. So moving on, we did have reason to convene in closed session, but it was evidently not properly noticed, so we will not be doing so this evening.
Can you explain that, please?
Not very well. All I know is that it was not properly noticed. Does anyone else have any?
No.
Just, yeah, I mean, just per the email
I did not
Scott
see the
sent.
email.
Yeah, there was, apparently, Mike
The wrong
Jolka
subject.
was.
Yeah, improper
Yeah.
statute.
It was- He just didn't feel that it was adequately noticed what the discussion was about for us to proceed.
It came down from the board president. I don't know.
So we'll move it to another time.
I'm assuming so, yes.
Seemed to me that the subject that was public noticed was not the right subject of the
Yeah.
discussion.
That was my
That's correct,
sense,
yeah.
yes.
I don't know if the statute was specifically the same or not.
That satisfactory?
Sure.
It'll have to be.
As I quickly check my email.
Okay. So that would be the agenda. We have future meetings. There's a regular board meeting February 26th and March 5th. Board development, February 26th. Do we have a subject for that, or do we know?
Not yet.
Okay. Finance on the 26th. Facilities way out in May. And policy February 12th and March 5th. Anybody have anything else? And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.